comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money,
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar. Ching, ching, bling, bling. Cut the chatter. You ain't talking money, then your talking don't matter.
So, question for you, I guess.
Yep.
For someone who sold over $3 billion worth of commercial property and has a portfolio of over 80 mil, what are some of the things you would say to someone who is trying, or to someone in their 20s and 30s who is trying to build personal wealth?
Look, you got to understand the asset class you're investing in. So these days for commercial, you need about 250 grand. And the thing with residential property is like there's limitations to it right now. So we're seeing the only way you can really scale a portfolio, and a lot of your followers would want to scale because there's no point just buying one house and then that's it. It's the cash flow. It's really becoming a big problem with residential.
Yeah. So like even before that, what's the mindset? Like what are some of the things you started off with before you started your property investing journey? Is it like strict behavior in terms of saving or like, you know, try to get a better job? So you're always chasing that income before they can even look at buying their first kind of, because that's a typical kind of stage. A lot of them they obviously love wanting to buy a commercial. That's like the end kind of goal, but they can't even first get into that first home, and when they do, they're buying a personal residence versus like an investment, so then they're just stuck. So what are those things, like principles you go by with?
Well, look, you've got to be a good saver, number one. If you can't save, you can't invest.
Right.
So stage number one, learn to save, budget, whatever you can per week away. And chase the money. So one thing I did is I picked jobs I didn't really like. I chose engineering because it paid more as a graduate. I then I traveled, I've left Sydney where I live to chase jobs that paid a bit more. And I just looked at it to a means to an end. So, if I got 30 grand extra pay per year, I'd be able to squirrel more of that away, and then I'd be able to put that into property, invest more, and then, that just brings retirement sooner.
And is that how you started?
Yeah.
So then you bought your first house?
So I worked all through uni. So I did the McDonald's jobs. I was a surveyor. I cleaned cars on the weekend. I did all of that stuff. I worked in a bar for many years as well. And it was about 6 years of working before I had enough for a deposit. And I did a 90% loan. So it was like as much as you could do at the time. And that was enough just to scrape into a house. And it was what was it? It was 400 and...
Sydney.
Yeah, and it's either just under $500,000, which is similar to what you can do in some average parts of Perth right now. But it's the same principles. You just buy it, you get in, and the first is your hardest. Yeah. The second is the second hardest. The third is the third hardest.
And was your first one your residence, or was that an investment?
Investment.
So you stayed at home, and then
and that's what like most people do now. Yeah. If you buy a house to live in first, unless you're on a really big income, you're going to be bolted to that mortgage for the next 20, 30 years. So I'm a big believer rent investing is important because one, it gives you flexibility. You can sort of move often. You're not strapped to that, non-taxable debt.
The average age in Australia is 36 to buy a property, your first property. I bought my first home just last year. Definitely agree with that kind of thinking.
100%.
So then how did you make the leap from resi to commercial? Was there something that came up and someone told you something about commercial, or?
Well, it took a while. I think I bought 19 houses before residential. So I was doing that.
Right.
But I wasn't buying standard properties. I was buying unit blocks. I was strata tiling and subdividing. So I was pretty hands-on. Like I renovated kitchens myself. I did at least 6 or 7 different sanding floors back.
So a lot of equity building.
Yeah, and just putting my own time into properties. So, I'm not a tradie, but I was doing it just to save money. And there were little uplifts that had impacts on valuation. So that led us to then revalue, then buy again and again and again. And like with the strata tiling, that I would buy like a block of 4 units in a regional part of Australia for the price of 3 units, and then you strata title it and you've got another one and you revalue it, and that kind of allowed us to buy a lot pretty quickly. But the real game changer was when the bank said no more. So the bank said, with all this residential debt, the yields were good. Like I was chasing an 8 to 9% gross yield. So by the time you take all the costs out of it, it was really 4% nets, 5% nets. So not great. And the bank saw that. So the bank said, no more lending, even though I had all this equity. And that was incredibly frustrating because I knew this was like working. Like I was making money, there was capital growth, there was upside, the rents were growing, but I had no ability to access it. And then I spoke with my broker and he said, why don't you do a commercial loan? I said, well, can I get a loan? He said, yeah, it's a totally different lending policy.
Yeah.
They had these things called lease docs. So as long as you had cash in the bank, whether it was refinanced as a line of credit or just flat cash, you could use that and do a standalone loan.
Yeah.
And then I just bought commercial properties from there.
Yeah. And what was your first one?
So we're in Perth in the eastern suburbs. Not a fantastic part of town, but it had a little supermarket and a fish and chip shop.
Nice.
9% net return, which is triple the return I was getting in residential. So, that one little deal was clearing about 1,000 week positive cash flow per week. So 50 grand pay rise effectively, and that looked good to the bank.
Yeah.
Went back to the bank, and then there was a bit of equity in that, and it just kept going from there, and it sped up at that point.
Sweet. And in terms of your big market prediction kind of things on how the market's kind of going now, as we go to we've obviously talked about that, and that's one of the big things as to why we're investing.
Yeah.
But what's your view now that, we've not had an interest rate cut, or the RBA has kind of not really said too much more?
Yeah.
How do you look at it? Yeah,
so my prediction is whether there's another rate rise or not, doesn't matter. The trend is, if you look at the future markets as of today, they're predicting multiple rate cuts in the next 12 months, but it's probably 6 to 12 months away.
Yeah.
In that period, we're going to have lower interest rates than we are today. People are going to feel more confident expanding their debt. The banks are going to let them lend more as well. So, we've had 13 rate rises. That has not slowed the market down. If you look at Perth, it's grown at strong double-digit returns for the last 24 months. So, if those rate rises couldn't affect that market and others, imagine when they start dropping.
Yeah.
There's just more buyers, and there's going to be more people trying to sell to capitalize on higher values as well. So, two things will happen: higher prices and more stock. So the smart investors will act before this happens, because even my client base, like we've got probably 600 clients waiting for properties in all price points, but there'd be a third of them waiting to see what happens with the market. So there's that third will come back. They're sitting on the fence right now waiting for the perfect time to invest, which is silly in a way. Like there's never a perfect environment. Yeah. Just imagine when the rates are coming down. Yeah. There'll be reason for that. The economy's struggling, and then this, if you want to find a reason not to invest, you always will. So my advice is, if you can safely invest, you can come to debt, either equity or cash.
It's a long-term play.
Just get into it, and then hold it for 30 years, and you'll get your 6-7% per annum growth plus the cash flow, and make an incredible return on equity.
So your kind of prediction is that things are going to keep going the way they are. The interest rates are not sort of affecting anything. But say if we did have an interest rate increase in November, how do you think that would?
It'll have no impact.
Okay. Yeah.
The reason we've had 13 rate rises, those investors will actually, they're not, those who are hurting are already hurting. Yeah. They're not buying already. They were long gone. They stopped buying.
But do you think the demand would slow down?
Well, people aren't going to fire sell, because remember, only 1/3 of properties in Australia have debt. There's a huge amount of people that pay their homes off, so they don't really care. Yeah, it's almost like it's generational thing. You've got the baby boomers who've got term deposits, so when the interest rates go up, they're making more money just sitting as cash in the bank, and then the young people are going to struggle more. So it'll hurt younger people more, and the older with cash and paid off homes, they don't really care about interest rates go up. If anything, it's good for them, because they'll make more money off their term deposit. But I just think that it would have, the market's just so undersupplied.
And in terms of cost of living though, obviously I feel, so coming from a retail angle where we supply fitness equipment, our average purchase is around that 3,000 to 4,000 range. Yeah. And that is quite hard for someone on 70, 80K to sort of start thinking about paying. Correct. So how do you think that's affecting the whole macroeconomics?
It's a good point. So the last 6 months, retail sales are down. So as of today, I think it's negative 0.3%. So retail sales are going backwards. Yeah. And that's when rent's gone up 6.7% on average in the last 12 months. Insurance has gone up 14%. Cost of buildings up 5-6% at the moment. So everything's going up. It's retail's going backwards. So that's what you're probably feeling at the moment.
Yeah.
You need a bit of this. We need more of that pain to happen because that will be the trigger for the interest rate to eventually come down.
Yeah.
Once it comes down, you'll probably see a reversal of some of these poorer figures in the market.
Yeah. And are you finding that because of that, your retail class, in terms of the commercial side, is that being affected because of that? Like, do you find there's the property prices might be down because maybe businesses are closing down? I'm not sure.
So there's two parts to your question. One is the owners of the property are separate to your client. So someone who's spending $3,000 to $4,000, that's different from someone owning a $5-6 million commercial property. So they're unaffected. If anything, they've really benefited from these high inflation figures because they're obviously getting all this extra rent growth. The part you're referring to is the tenants. Yes, that some of them are struggling. We are seeing, basically there's just slightly longer periods in between vacancies. So it used to be maybe 3 months, now it's 4 or 5 months.
So people are still willing to open retail businesses?
Yeah, and there's different types of them. So this is the thing, whenever the economy struggles, some businesses close down and they morph into different ones. You look around, we're at Bondi Junction at the moment. A lot of the food-related businesses closed down during COVID and they got replaced with, health-related type businesses. Those saunas, across the road here, there's what is it called? It's a float and wellness centre. I've never heard of one of those before, but they're paying very high rents and they're doing very well, but others are not. So
so it depends on the type of business.
Yeah, it's really variable.
In terms of coming back to property out of my own curiosity, how do you sort of do your research? Well, what are some of the tips you would give someone who's looking at buying commercial property and is not using a buyer's agent, to do when they are searching for commercial property? What do you look out for?
Yeah, so top tips is always look at the relatability. So, I know the property we looked for you, it could be 50 different types of businesses. Different brands of food. It could be, you could turn into some kind of medical or allied health type business. Anything with exposure, you can generally find a different type of tenant. So tip number one, it's got to be easy to relet.
So that's the zoning.
And that's almost it's not common sense, it's business sense. You just got to put yourself in there. You look at our office today, if we left, who would take it? It could be a dentist, it could be a real estate agency company, it could be some kind of IT business, I don't know. But there's multiple options. Next door they sell furniture, for example. So it could be a furniture business. So relatability of a business like this, great. The ones that you would struggle with would be like a service station on a rural road. If that service station went broke,
it'd be hard to get
very hard. So relatability would kind of answer that question for you. In terms of paying the right price, this is where it will get very difficult. If you're coming into this cold, commercially it's quite complicated. This is not like buying a house where you can kind of relate to it and go, that's a good suburb. Here's the value of other 4-bedroom houses. You've got to value the square metre rate. You've got to factor in the fit out cost. You've got to look at the cap rate of the market. I'd just say just learn about it. There's courses out there. There's books on commercial property. Just get through some of that because there's hundreds of pages and hours of research you need to get through to understand everything because you got to do the due diligence on properties too. So, you got to know the right questions to ask the tenant, check the zoning, is it legal, all that type of stuff. Are there clearways or, resumption corridors on that property where the road, council could take a portion of the road from you? So, you wouldn't go to spend your life savings without being an expert, and that's where buyer's agents can come into it, where they do this day to day. So there's shortcuts. But I like my clients knowing as much as possible because we're a buyer's agency, but it's harder working with a client who doesn't know about this asset class. It's fine if they don't, but if they got the basics, that makes life easier because they recognise a good deal quicker as well. So that they generally say yes faster or no faster to a property, which is convenient.
So basically to look out for, just to check that they have relatability, you check that they're the right sort of industries and it fits kind of what's happening there. Do you look at the length of leases? Obviously there's a lot of aspects to it. So you've got the length of the leases, the personal guarantees, how does it work with the property value sort of goes by the return on the yield, right? Yeah. But you just said that also the fit out cost and all of that kind of comes in. Yeah. But when they sell a property, you just go, 7% divided by the rent to get around 3 million or something. Yeah. So how does the fit out come into that sort of equation? Yeah. So as simply as I can explain it, understanding the cap rate is the first step of answering that question. So let's say the cap rate of that market's 7%. That means if you have 70 grand of rent, you divide that by 0.07 and you'll get $1 million. Now, if there's a really high quality fit out in that, you might cap rate that at a lesser amount. So let's say it's a Subway restaurant with a 10-year lease and it's got a really good fit out. You might go, the cap rate of that's 6%. Yeah. So that means only 60 grand of rent is worth $1 million in that case, because you divide it by 0.06 this time. So if you've got more rent at a lower cap rate, it multiplies that value out further. So the cap rate will shrink, which is a good thing. So the more compressed the yield, the more that, dividing by that yield will actually increase the value. So if there's no fit out, you'd obviously there's a higher risk to it, because you might say, I need to buy that at 8% now. To justify taking that extra risk because the fit out's terrible. Yeah. So that ties in with this property that we have looked at. So basically, I have come to Scott. I've got quite a few commercial properties in WA. I don't know anything about Sydney. So I've used Scott to sort of come in and try to help us find a property in Sydney and in other states of Australia. So then with this current property that we have in Auburn, good cap rate, it's got a good fit out. Yeah. So that means we're winning on both spaces. Yeah, you're winning particularly because it's well over 7% in Sydney. So when I first presented that property, I remember I was excited by, I don't see 7% net returns. Yeah. And that's a true net return. That's after land tax and all the outgoings. But generally they're selling at 5% or under in Sydney. So you've already made money on the way in. Yeah. And there's also an advantage because it is a good fit out. There's a 5-year lease on it. There's options. Good increases on it, so that should value up quite well. Yeah. Especially in once those interest rates drop, I'd say revalue it. And because it's Sydney, there's going to be basically a lower cap rate, so there should be a fair bit of equity you could pull out of that. So it's actually a capital growth play. As much as it is a yield, it's also growth. Yeah. Cool. And the last sort of thing, and then we can maybe not do that, is more around. I love building businesses, and I think you love building businesses too. What has your mindset towards business? What do you do? How do you look at it? Why are you building this business? And what's the real kind of Scott thinking around the whole business branding space? So I love building businesses. I always have. And it's the way I build my own personal property portfolio was like a business. Yeah. So because I wanted cash flow, I wanted to stand alone. It needs to be managed professionally with the right people. We've got staff managing my portfolio because we've got 70 odd tenants. Yeah. And some of them are Aldi, the supermarket and big international businesses. So you can't just give it to a local property manager. Yeah. So when you run a business well, it's quite satisfying because you can see it grow. It gives people opportunities to be employed. Yeah. But the difference with a portfolio to a real business is the branding. Yeah. And I do like that. And I know that's a big part of what you do because branding, it's like your reputation. Yeah. And I look at that way more important than revenue. The revenue comes through doing well in business, through building a good reputation and doing right by the clients. And I've really got a big kick out of it. We've grown from 1 staff member to 90 in not that many years, and it's so if there was someone who's a young business owner sitting here listening, how do they go about building a good brand like that? Well, it's trust, number one. If you don't get trust, and that's hard to get to, especially now because there's so much competition on the internet. You got to have your own angle, because one thing that we all know is people will
emulate you or copy you, and then that basically means your brand gets washed away pretty quick. It's a big problem. So you just got to have your own identity, and don't worry about others. Like, and it's hard to do that now because it's such a crowded space. But you know, that's one thing we've always led from the front. I've never really looked at what others are doing in my industry, and I think that kind of resonates with the clients. And then you just got to back it up with good service, and that's hard too. Like, you know, especially being an importer and stuff like that. There's you've got third parties that get involved and complicate the process. So it's how you handle those difficult situations.
So it's pretty much putting the people first. Putting your staff first. And then, you know, everything else that comes with it. I get asked this quite a bit, and he asked this to me just on the way here. And I never know the right way to sort of answer it. So I'm quite interested to hear how you answer it. Does money buy you happiness?
No, it gives you comfortability. And it gives you a sense of, I don't know. It's a good question. Like, it gives you a sense of freedom, I'd say. And it allows you to make better decisions, because I've been poor longer than I've been rich, and I guess the biggest difference was the stress. Like, and I was quite frugal. Like, I'd save everything. There was a reason I did all the labouring jobs on my own properties, because it was to save $300 or $1,000 doing that. And you know, you'd go on holiday and you'd stress going, I've got to spend this per day. Once that's all out of the picture, you can be more creative, you make better long-term decisions for clients, you know, businesses. And that's pretty empowering. So empowering is the difference. That does create happiness to a degree, but in terms of materialistic things, I think there's only a small window time frame that those will give you happiness. Like, you buy a new car, it'll be great for a couple of years, and then you'll be like, where's the next thing? And you're chasing that dopamine hit forever. But the money will just give you comfort. And that's important.
Thank you very much for this.